How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell. Introduction. Have you ever woken up, reached for your phone, and felt a small wave of dread wash over you as you opened up your social media? Jenny Odell quotes a tweet that captures this feeling perfectly. Wakes up and looks at phone. Let's see what fresh horrors await me on the fresh horrors device. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. It's a feeling that has quietly crept into the lives of millions. We live in a world that tells us every second of our day should be productive, optimized, and, if possible, monetized. Our worth, it seems, is measured by what we do, what we produce, and how busy we appear to be. Our free time is something to be managed, our relationships are things to be networked, and our own lives are projects to be branded. And in the middle of all this noise, this constant pressure to perform, there's a lingering sense of anxiety. A feeling of being pulled in 1,000 directions at once, unable to hold a single thought for more than a few moments before the next notification, the next outrage, the next demand on our attention pulls us away. In 2019, a book quietly emerged that gave a name to this struggle and offered a radical, beautiful, and profound path forward. That book is How to Do Nothing: Resisting the Attention Economy by Jenny Odell. It's not a self-help book in the traditional sense. It's not about life hacks or digital detoxes that promise to make you more productive. In fact, it's the opposite. It became an instant New York Times bestseller and was named a Best Book of the Year by outlets like Time and NPR, resonating deeply with a world that was starting to realize the true cost of the digital age. The author, Jenny Odell, is an artist, a writer, and a teacher at Stanford University, living right in the heart of Silicon Valley, the very place that engineered this crisis of attention. After the chaotic political events of 2016, she found herself, like many, feeling paralyzed and overwhelmed. Her response wasn't to engage more, to shout louder online, or to optimize her activism. Instead, she started going to a local rose garden almost every day. And there, surrounded by the quiet, intricate world of flowers and birds, she would simply do nothing. This book is the extraordinary result of that simple act. It's a field guide to reclaiming your mind from the forces that want to steal it. And what I want to promise you today is that by the end of our journey through its pages, you will see the world differently. You'll understand that doing nothing is not an act of laziness, but a powerful act of political resistance. And you'll discover that everything you need to build a more meaningful, connected, and truly human life might already be right in front of you, just waiting for you to pay attention. Book summary. Our story begins in that rose garden in Oakland, California. For Jenny Odell, this wasn't just a pretty park, it was a sanctuary. In a world that was screaming for her attention, the garden demanded nothing. It was a place to just sit, to breathe, and to listen. This daily act of doing nothing wasn't an escape from reality, it was a way of finding it again. It was a way to create, as the philosopher Gilles Deleuze once wrote, little gaps of solitude and silence in which we might eventually find something to say. This is the core of Odell's message: nothing isn't empty. It's a space for reflection, for healing, and for regaining the ability to think clearly. In the attention economy, our time and our focus are treated like resources to be mined. Platforms like Facebook and Instagram are designed to keep us in a profitable state of anxiety, envy, and distraction. They hijack our natural desire for community and connection and turn it into something that can be bought and sold. Doing nothing is the first step in taking that power back. But what does it really mean? Odell introduces us to a powerful, living metaphor: an old-growth redwood tree in the Oakland Hills nicknamed Old Survivor. It's the last of its kind, a 500-year-old giant that miraculously survived the logging boom of the gold rush. And why did it survive? Because it was useless. It was twisted, located on a steep, difficult slope, and not tall enough to be good timber. The loggers just passed it by. This tree teaches us the first great lesson of the book: the power of resistance in place. Old Survivor didn't run away. It stayed right where it was, but it made itself into a shape that the system couldn't easily use or profit from. Odell argues that we can do the same. We can refuse to let our lives be measured only by productivity and efficiency. We can embrace the parts of ourselves that are nuanced, messy, and can't be turned into a data point or a personal brand. This isn't about quitting your job and moving to the woods. It's about staying in the world but refusing to play by its rules. It's about choosing maintenance and care over the Silicon Valley obsession with disruption and growth. Think of the volunteers who tend to the roses in the garden, or the quiet, often invisible work of a mother caring for her child. This work doesn't produce something new, but it sustains life. Odell argues that this kind of work, the work of maintenance, is the lifeblood of any healthy community, yet our culture dismisses it because it doesn't fit our narrow definition of progress. So, if the first half of doing nothing is disengaging from the attention economy, what's the second half? It's about re-engaging with something else, the real, physical world right in front of you. It's about redirecting the attention you've reclaimed and planting it back into your actual time and place. This idea might bring to mind the Back to the Land movements of the 1960s, when thousands of young people, fed up with the Vietnam War and a society they saw as plastic and corrupt, decided to drop out and start communes in the countryside. It's a tempting fantasy, isn't it, to just say forget it, and start over somewhere new. But Odell takes a hard look at this history and finds a cautionary tale. The dream of a clean slate, of escaping politics and society altogether, turned out to be an illusion. Commune members still had to pay mortgages, they couldn't grow all their own food, and they often brought the ghosts of the old world with them, conflicts over money, traditional gender roles, and the struggle between individual freedom and the needs of the group. They found that you can't really escape the world, because you carry it inside of you. Even more telling is what happened when some communes tried to solve their problems not with messy politics, but with perfect design. They became fascinated with a utopian novel called Walden 2, written by the behavioral scientist B.F. Skinner. The book describes a community where everyone is happy and productive because their behavior has been perfectly engineered from birth. The founder of this fictional utopia proudly declares, their behavior is determined, yet they're free. It's a chilling vision, where politics is replaced by algorithms, and people are treated like components in a machine. This dream of escaping messy human interaction for a perfectly designed system sounds a lot like the techno-utopian fantasies of some Silicon Valley billionaires today, who imagine starting new societies on floating ocean platforms or in outer space, free from the constraints of democracy. The lesson from the communes is clear: a total retreat is not only impossible, it's a dead end. It often avoids our responsibility to the world we actually live in. So, if we can't fully escape, what can we do? This leads us to the anatomy of a true refusal. Odell brings us to one of the most famous stories of refusal in all of literature: Herman Melville's Bartleby, the Scrivener. Bartleby is a clerk in a Wall Street office who, one day, when asked to do a simple task, calmly replies with the now legendary phrase, "I would prefer not to." He doesn't yell, he doesn't argue, he doesn't say "I will not," he simply steps outside the logic of the request. His boss is left completely stunned, like a man who has run off a cliff and is suspended in midair. Bartleby's response is so powerful because it doesn't just say no. It refuses the very terms of the question. It carves out what Odell calls a third space, a magical exit from a choice you didn't want to make in the first place. It's the same kind of radical stance taken by the ancient Greek philosopher Diogenes, who lived in a tub and famously told Alexander the Great to stand out of my light. Diogenes didn't flee society, he lived right in the middle of it, as a constant, living refutation of its absurd values. He would walk backward down the street or roll his tub around just to look as busy as everyone else. He was participating, but in the wrong way. This kind of refusal takes immense discipline. It takes will. It's the same will we see in Henry David Thoreau, who went to jail for refusing to pay taxes to a government that supported slavery and war. For Thoreau, the only truly free place in a fundamentally unjust society was prison. He was living in a state of permanent refusal, staying in the world but standing apart from it, judging it not by its own laws, but by a higher moral law. But here we face a harsh reality. The ability to refuse often requires a certain amount of privilege, a margin of safety that many people simply don't have. Thoreau had someone pay his tax for him. Students in the 1960s civil rights sit-ins could protest because they had the support of their colleges and weren't as vulnerable as working adults who could be fired for speaking up. Bartleby, with no one to support him, ultimately dies in prison. Today, in our world of economic precarity, of gig work, student debt, and the constant fear of being left behind, that margin for refusal feels like it's shrinking for everyone. We see it in the Stanford Duck Syndrome, where students feel they have to appear calm on the surface while paddling furiously underneath just to keep up. They are trapped in a system that demands constant performance, driven by a very real fear of the consequences of falling behind. So where does that leave us? If our economic margin is gone, what resource do we have left to withdraw? Odell's answer is beautifully simple: our attention. Attention may be the last bastion of freedom we have. This is where the book shifts from critique to practice. It becomes a manual for retraining our attention, for learning to see the world with new eyes. Odell shares her own journey into birdwatching, which she humorously suggests should be called bird noticing. The practice is the opposite of looking something up online. You can't force a bird to appear. You have to be quiet, patient, and just wait. At first, she just started hearing birdsong more. Then, she learned to distinguish one song from another. The single category of bird sounds broke open into a rich and diverse language spoken by robins, sparrows, and hawks. This is a simple function of the quality of one's attention. The more you look, the more you see. She compares this to the work of the artist David Hockney. Hockney famously disliked photography because he felt it saw the world from the perspective of a paralyzed cyclops for a split second. Our experience of the world isn't a single snapshot, it's a continuous flow of separate glimpses that our minds stitch together. So he created these incredible photo collages, like Pear Blossom Highway, where hundreds of individual photos are pieced together to create a single landscape. The road seems to balloon toward you, objects are out of proportion, and there's no single vanishing point. The piece forces your eye to wander, to notice details, and to become aware of your own act of seeing. It's an exercise in attention. Just as Hockney retrains our sight, the composer John Cage retrains our hearing. Cage is famous for his piece 4 minutes 33 seconds, where a pianist sits at a piano and plays nothing for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. The music is whatever happens in that silence, the coughs from the audience, the rustling of programs, the distant sound of traffic. Odell describes going to a Cage performance and then walking out into the city, hearing the world with a clarity she had never experienced before. The sounds of the cars, the wind, the footsteps, they had always been there, but now, she could truly hear them. These artistic practices are like training programs for the mind. They teach us that our reality is not fixed. It is rendered by what we choose to pay attention to. When you change the pattern of your attention, you change the world you live in. For Odell, this re-rendering of reality led her to something she calls bioregionalism, the practice of getting to know, in deep detail, the specific ecological place you inhabit. It started with birds, then trees, then the bugs on the trees, then the watersheds, the mountain ranges, the fault lines. She tells a wonderful story about rediscovering a creek from her childhood in Cupertino, the heart of Silicon Valley. It was a place she had always seen as a featureless suburban sprawl. But one day, looking at an old map, she realized that a wiggly line she thought was a road was actually Saratoga Creek. Suddenly, a memory surfaced, a mysterious, tangled green ditch at the edge of her kindergarten playground, a place where lost balls could never be retrieved. It had been there the whole time, an ancient waterway snaking invisibly beneath the shopping centers and office parks. When she and a friend finally went to explore the creek bed, they found a hidden world. It was a portal to a deeper, wilder reality that existed just on the other side of a chain-link fence, a reminder that we don't live in a simulation, but on a giant, living rock with its own ancient logic. And this brings us to the final, and perhaps most important expansion of our attention, from the non-human world to the human one. To the ecology of strangers. Odell recounts a harrowing experience of walking down the street and seeing a young woman collapse and have a seizure. In that moment, the ordinary world fell away. She was completely responsible for this person she had never met. After the paramedics arrived, she continued to the grocery store, but everything looked different. She saw the people calmly choosing cereals and picking apples, and all she could think was that it was a miracle that all of them were alive. These moments of encounter with strangers jolt us out of our self-centered default setting, as David Foster Wallace called it. They remind us that every person we see, on the bus, in the grocery store, has a life as complex and vivid as our own. Our social media filter bubbles, however, are designed to protect us from these messy, unpredictable encounters. They feed us a world of people who are just like us, reinforcing our biases and shrinking our capacity for empathy. Odell argues that we need to actively resist this. We need to care about our neighbors, not just for practical reasons they're the ones who will help you in an emergency, but because a world without strangers, without difference, is an impoverished and lonely one. True growth and creativity come from encounters with those who challenge us, who surprise us, who turn our world upside down. This means letting go of the idea of a stable, fixed self, the kind of self that can be neatly packaged into a personal brand. Our identities are not solid things we own. They are fluid, blobby, and constantly being shaped by our relationships with others and with the world around us. Just as a watershed is a collection of flows, not a static object, we too are emergent wonders, full of contradictions and possibilities. So, how do we restore the grounds for all this deep thought and connection? Odell argues we need to reclaim both physical and digital spaces for real community. She looks back to things like community memory, the world's first public computer bulletin board, set up in a Berkeley record store in 1972. It was local, non-commercial, and a true reflection of the neighborhood. This stands in stark contrast to platforms like Nextdoor, which may be geographically based but are still driven by advertising, venture capital, and a logic of growth that turns neighborliness into a commodity. The future, Odell suggests, might lie in decentralized, non-commercial networks that respect our need for both privacy and public life, that encourage slow, deliberate communication instead of instant reaction. But more than any specific technology, what we need to restore are the spaces of appearance, the living rooms, the parks, the community centers, where we can meet face to face, have real conversations, and build the trust needed for meaningful collective action. In the end, this leads us to a powerful new idea of progress, one that doesn't just build, but also dismantles. Odell calls it manifest dismantling. She tells the story of the San Clemente Dam in California. Built in 1921, it was eventually declared useless and seismically unsafe, and it blocked steelhead trout from reaching their spawning grounds. Instead of just reinforcing it, a coalition of groups undertook a massive project to tear it down and restore the river. It was a creative act of destruction, replacing the dam with, as one person said, nothing. This is progress that looks backward to heal the wounds of the past. It's the work of remediation, of care, of putting things back. It's the opposite of manifest destiny, the 19th century idea that progress meant relentlessly pushing westward, paving over anything and anyone that stood in the way. Manifest dismantling is about recognizing that we are not conquerors of the land, but plain members and citizens of it. It's about learning to collaborate with the world instead of trying to control it. The book ends where it began, in a restored place. Middle Harbor Shoreline Park in Oakland, a sliver of marshland created from the sediment of a working shipping port. It's a place built on the ruins of industry and war, an invitation for life to return. And it has. Odell stands there, watching thousands of shorebirds, pelicans, avocets, egrets, congregating in the shallows. The pelicans, an ancient species that has survived for 30 million years, fly past the gleaming new skyscrapers of San Francisco, making the frantic pace of that world seem like a joke. They are old survivors, sheltering in a space that was once dedicated to destruction. And in that moment, the question of the attention economy just fades away. The only thing to do is to be present. To stand perpendicular to the earth, not pitching forward, not falling back, and just watch. To pay attention to life itself. Commentary. What Jenny Odell has given us with How to Do Nothing is more than a book, it's a lifeline. It's a beautifully argued, deeply felt permission slip to step off the hamster wheel of modern life. It doesn't offer easy answers or a 10-step plan. Instead, it offers a fundamental shift in perspective. The most powerful lesson for me is the redefinition of nothing. In our culture, nothing is a vacuum, a waste of time, a sign of laziness. Odell teaches us that nothing is a generative space. It is the soil from which new ideas, deeper connections, and a more resilient self can grow. It's the pause that gives meaning to the notes. She shows us that by strategically withholding our attention from the platforms that are designed to exhaust it, we're not checking out of life, we're checking back in. The idea of resistance in place is also incredibly empowering, especially right now. It can feel like the only options we have are either to burn ourselves out in constant, reactive protest or to retreat into cynical despair. Odell offers a third way, to stay put, but to live differently. To become like old survivor, the useless tree, to cultivate the parts of ourselves and our communities that cannot be measured, optimized, or commodified. This isn't a passive stance, it's an active, disciplined, and deeply political choice to live by a different set of values. It's a commitment to care, to maintenance, and to the slow, unglamorous work of sustaining the things that matter. So, how can we start to apply these ideas in our own lives, right now? It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. First, practice a new kind of attention. The next time you're walking somewhere, put your phone away and just notice. Pick one thing. It could be the trees on your street, the architectural details of the buildings, or the sounds of the city. Don't judge it, don't analyze it, just observe it. See if you can notice something you've never seen before. This small act is the beginning of reclaiming your attention. Second, learn one thing about where you live. What is the name of the watershed you're in? What native tribes originally lived on this land? What is the oldest tree in your neighborhood? Find one anchor to your physical place. This is the first step toward bioregional awareness, toward moving from just being in a place to being of a place. Finally, resist the urge to have an immediate opinion. The next time a wave of outrage sweeps through your social media feed, just pause. Give yourself the gift of time and context. Ask yourself, what am I not seeing? Who benefits from my immediate reaction? This isn't about becoming uninformed. It's about becoming more thoughtful. It's about restoring the grounds for real thought. That was a summary of How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell. We've touched on the big ideas today, but a summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful forest. The real magic happens when you step into the woods yourself. The book is filled with so much more: beautiful prose, fascinating side stories, and a depth of thought that can only be experienced firsthand. If anything we've discussed today has sparked your curiosity or offered you a glimmer of hope, I truly encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning, it's an experience that can fundamentally change how you see your world and your place within it. The link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It lets us know we're on the right track and ensures you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book. Let's continue to learn and grow together.